I mean, I've achieved a certain level of success in this industry, or so I'd like to think. I mean, as an author and media personality in newspapers and TV, and my talks get really good reviews, and I had a great job, and I still have a wonderful family and a wonderful wife. They didn't leave me because of this. But now I'm unemployed, which is interesting. I'm living off of donations. I don't ask questions about where this money comes from, by the way. Interestingly enough, I'm happy. See, I had a whole bunch of stuff, but even with all this stuff, I found myself pretty miserable. And when it got right down to it, I think the problem was I felt like my life didn't really count for a whole lot. I mean, despite all that stuff, I don't really think I was making a difference, whether it be in the industry, as a person on this planet. I did a lot, but I didn't really feel like I was doing anything. So my goal tonight is to save you from that fate. As you saw in the write-up of the talk, it's to try to talk you into jumping off the corporate ladder. That's not really what it's about. I don't expect you to quit your job and move to Africa. But I do hope that you can learn from some of the things that I've learned in my life. And the way that I'm going to present it is to actually tell you my story. And it starts when I was very young and pretty innocent. And yes, those are lederhosen, and that was the only time in my life I've ever worn lederhosen, I swear. But as I got old enough to make my own decisions, I turned to the dark side. Is it any wonder I ended up in a place like this? Well, my computer career started with the TRS-80. I didn't actually own one. I went to the mall to borrow it. They set out in the Radio Shack, and they were like right in the front. You could sit down, you could use it all you wanted. So I went to the library and got some basic programming books and a notebook and started writing down basic programs in a little notebook, which even that statement right there saying, using the word notebook, you don't quite understand. We're talking paper, right? Wrote it on paper, not in a laptop, took it to the mall and tested my programs. And if they didn't work, I'd fix them there and write the changes back in my notebook. And eventually I got my first computer. This was the TI, this was the Bill Cosby computer. How many people remember this thing? Really, I feel much better, thank you. I'm hoping some of you actually owned it and didn't see it in like history class or something. But anyway, this computer started things off for me. I had some backyard computer programming lessons given by a local college professor, and we brought our black and white TVs out into the backyard with a long extension cord and our TIs, and we learned programming. The thing that was interesting about that time in my life is that computers were sort of magic then. In my opinion, that's been lost as the years have gone by. I mean, if you understood how to program or you understood how computers work, you were different, and you talked to people in a completely different language that everybody else on the planet thought was foreign. You can't really get away with that much anymore. It was an interesting time. I upgraded from the TI to the Commodore 64, and that's when I got my first storage device. My pen and paper solution was very happy to have a tape drive, save stuff on cassette tapes. And of course, I got my first modem, which is operating at about the same speed that I'm operating at in Uganda right now. Now, the modem opened up a world of things for me, as it probably did for many of you. I started getting into BBSs, and I got into the pirating scene and, groups that, pirated software. I became a courier for LOD, and there were just a whole bunch of things that I got into. But the most interesting thing about all of this period of my life was the fact that I found a community of people that was just like me. In BBSs, I found people that were brilliant, a little bit mischievous, but they were open, and there was all this information, right? You had text files and all sorts of things that you could learn from, just for the taking. I found that these people thought outside the box, they pushed the envelope of technology, and they solved difficult problems elegantly. This was just, it came with the territory. So I absorbed it all. I tinkered and experimented and learned as much as I could. And even though it didn't exactly gel with my Christian conservative upbringing, I found my first true identity as a person. I was a hacker. Now, I didn't do much malicious stuff. I did my share of war dialing and tinkered around with computers that didn't belong to me and stuff like that. But regardless of the fact that I wasn't actually like breaking stuff, hacker is who I was. This was part of my being. That's how I was wired. So even though at 12 I looked like this, my wife told me not to do this. I do have some old pictures of you, my friend. Even though at 12 I looked like this, I dreamed that one day I would look like this, that I'd be a spy or something, and I would be a super cyber ninja. That's what I used to call it. And I'd sneak around at 12 with custom Lego gear that was spy stuff. And I'd hop on my neighbor's shed and, I'd spy on all the neighbors and I'd pretend that I had some super hack that I was on. It was weird. I was 12. And then I'd do all that adventuresome stuff and then I'd go back in my room and play with my computer. Not very exciting. In school, I was a rather average guy. I aced all my tests and did no homework, so I really was average. I got straight C's. It was the fastest way to get through school. It didn't cost me a lot of time and it gave me more time to play on the computer. So when my dad brought home a 386, that of course opened up a whole new thing. I started learning Windows and I learned Linux. I ripped the machine apart and put it back together to learn hardware. I learned more stuff from the BBS scene, and at this point the basic functionality of the internet was there, Usenet and stuff like that I was getting through school campus. I learned some stuff about RF. Started playing around with my TV and I learned that I could jack up the bands to get into the 900 megahertz range and listen to cell phone conversations, right? I don't know if you guys remember that sort of stuff when that was possible, but it was an interesting time. I also took my scanner that I got for Christmas and ripped it apart and gave it a raw digital out so that I could hook it up into my sound card and pull down pager signals. Any of you mess with this stuff? POCSAG and Flex back in the day, pagers. It was like uncharted territory with all the people that I hung out with. This was part of what pushed me to that edge where people were like, dude, you're taking this a little bit too far. And that was confirmed one day when I started pulling pager signals from a particular IP address. And once I looked up the IP address, I realized that it routed to none other than the White House. And I was pulling down the sysadmin's pager messages for the White House, telling him when the firewall was going down and all the systems were rebooting, because he loved wiring his stuff that way so that he knew everything. Interesting time. Those days were a lot like the no-show socks. There were no boundaries. I know that makes no sense, but I just had to put that in there. The point is that through the community, through the hacking community and all this information that was there and the fact that it was open and that people were willing to share this, I had so much knowledge that when it came time for me to get into college and they wanted to offer me RPG and COBOL, I laughed at them. I said, what could you possibly do with these languages? And they said, well, you write business reports. And I'm like, well, that sucks. I'm like, I know Fortran and C. I could write business reports in that too, but I could do other stuff. And so I dropped out of college. And interestingly enough, that was not a detriment to my career. In fact, it boosted my career because I had more time to play. And eventually I did land that dream job. I got a job at CSC, and this was in one of their corporate magazines that they put out to basically show off, was this little write-up that described my job. And I realized that at that point, my dream of the 12-year-old had come true. I was doing all of that stuff. I worked for a group called Strike Force, and we got these press photos taken because our job was so freaking cool that they had to hire photographers, right, to capture us in action. And no, that wasn't a real gig, and why in God's name would we drive around in an open Jeep with a security shirt on and wires and all that stuff? Right, but still it was cool. We did assessments full time. We started with government clients. We did the rounds. We worked every single command and control facility in the world. Every single one of them on our team. Tested every single one of them. We got into corporate stuff. It wasn't long before we were doing lots more physical assessments, actually breaking into buildings, getting past security guards, social engineering, dumpster diving. We're talking armed guards. This was cool stuff. This was a great job. So all that stuff had come true. The super secret cyber ninja spy thing from being a kid had come true. But honestly, it wasn't enough. I wanted more. And as you can tell from the shirt in that photo, DEF CON, what I wanted was something more than this awesome job. I wanted recognition. I wanted some fame. And back in the late 90s, one of the ways that you did that was you got published in Frack, right? If you got published in Frack, you had made it. So in 1998, I got published in Frack for the first time under a pseudonym, little article on steganography. And that was the first part of quote making it. The second part happened quite a bit later in 2003 at DEF CON 11 when I landed my first speaking slot at DEF CON. And that was the point at which I was like, this is it. This is like the coolest thing ever. Not only do I have the cool job, but I'm going to get the recognition because I'm speaking at DEF CON. And I knew all the famous guys back then. I mean, I didn't know them personally, right? I knew them from their talks. And you know who these people are. Kaminsky and Potter and FX. Some of you might not remember Route Demon 9, right? But these were the guys who had a certain something different, whether it was in their stage presentation or the aura that they had around them. These guys were definitive, they made it. And so what I did when I got my shot at DEF CON was I analyzed all of their talks and I pulled bits and pieces from their talks and their personalities and I glued together this like Frankenstein, and I really wish I had the graphic software to like pull this off and like morph all of them together into one face. It would be hideous. No offense to any of them individually, of course. You might give them Mike's arms there and Bruce's smile. I don't know what you'd give him, but either way, it would be horrible. And that's what the talk was. My talk sucked. How many of you saw that talk? 2003, DEF CON 11, old school. I actually found the video. The link was broken for a really long time. I'd convinced myself that somebody had done that on purpose. And there was something about watching that really bugged me. Looking back on it, I was filled with swagger and full of myself, and I thought I was the man, and it showed, and I did my little talk on watching the Watchers, which was my first hacking Google talk, and I really thought I was the man, but at the end of the talk, I knew it sucked. I didn't get any party invites. There was no press. I didn't have a single groupie. Well, I had one, but I wanted them to go away. It was a homeless guy that wasn't supposed to be at the conference. But looking back on it, I realized that this phase of my life had become a lot about me. The early phases of my life, when I was accelerating the fastest, I was part of a community. I was part of a bigger group. I was part of a bigger whole. I was learning from a community. I was giving back to a community. As soon as the focus got to me, it started taking a nosedive. And it was basically because I was trying to be someone else. After DEF CON 11 in 2003, I felt extremely desperate. In fact, I left DEF CON convinced that I was going to get out of the industry. I didn't care what I was going to do. As my friend Jason says, I'm going to get into shrubbery. Something completely different. And that wasn't a double Monty Python plug, by the way. But whatever happened, I fell back on my roots, basically, which was conservative Christian, and I gave up my life. I gave my life to Christ. I turned my life over to God, and I wrote this on my website. And this was an interesting thing because for me, this was suicide. I was so fed up with how I had gotten through that talk and where I had gotten, this was the top rung of the ladder for me. I had the great job. I had matched all my expectations, landed the speaking gig, published in Frack, the whole 9 yards. I'm on the top of the mountain, and the view sucked. And it made me feel really miserable. And this was my way of committing suicide. I thought to myself, if I do something crazy like this and go back to what my Sunday school teachers taught me, walk straight, clean up my act, live for more than myself. Everybody in the community would be like, you're an idiot, we'll see you later, have fun with your shrubs. But my prayer was pretty straightforward and it was simple. In fact, I remember it very clearly. It was, do something with my life. Well, I like to think that God answered me, because within a couple weeks, Singress called and said, we'd like you to write a book on that Watching the Watcher thing you did. That packing Google thing. You think you could get a whole book out of that? Now, it's much more common today for the publishers to go around and just try to scrape up people, right? Find dead bodies on the ground and try to resuscitate them and go, would you write a chapter? Yes. Kind of thing's pretty common. But back then, it really wasn't. I mean, they were a little more choosy and a little more picky. And after 6 months of debating about it and 3 months of actually writing it, Google hacking came out. And it was a ridiculous success, even by my standards. In fact, it overshadowed anything that I had accomplished before then. Google hacking was huge. And it wasn't mine. I didn't invent it. I didn't come up with the idea. Most of the queries that were in the book were written by someone else. But that was okay. The reason it was okay is because it was a community effort, and I told people that it was. I was very straightforward about the fact that this wasn't all me. This was a community thing, and it blew up. Grifter emailed me. I don't remember the exact context, but Grifter emailed me and asked if I'd write a chapter for his book that he was working on called Aggressive Self-Defense. This was the first piece of fiction that I did, and it just lit the fire in me. So when Aaron called me and said, would you help write my book? Book number 3 came along. That was ICH. And then Bruce, you remember Bruce Potter, right, from those first slides, calls me and says, will you help me write my book? So this is book number 4 on OSX. And then I pulled together a bunch of experts who I had come to know and wrote this one, book on pen testing. This is more technical than anything I had done before. And then last but certainly not least, the Rockstar series. This was the stealing series, which most of you are familiar with because you own it now. You own the owning. How that works, I don't know, but that was the book that you were given. This was the series for Singress. In fact, I don't think it's exaggerating to say it was the series in the industry, period. Because all the rock stars wrote on this one. All the names, all the people that I respected, all the people that I looked up to were on this series. And when I got asked to write on it, I was absolutely terrified. Ryan's terrifying, Thor's terrifying, but that's not what I mean. I was terrified at the prospect of writing alongside these people because I held them in such high regard. So I didn't have a single O-day to my name. I didn't invent anything new. I hated English. But regardless, it was absolute madness, and it turned into this. 12 book projects. The Google book started it all. Then came the landslide of press appearances. All this crap started happening. And before I realized that this was something that was far beyond my control, well, it had to go a little farther before I realized it was out of control. That was the whole movie star appearances thing. And yes, that's Vanilla Ice and Jenny McCarthy and Paris Hilton. These were weird times. But life was good. Still, and I don't know why, with all this stuff going, I was miserable again. Once again, I had gotten myself to the point where I was in 2003, where I was miserable. See, I was given a gift of this Google thing and all these books and lots of things, but I started noticing these little things around me that bugged me. The first thing was my forums. Now, my forums started at around 500 users. It exploded to 80,000 users. Like 4 months, something ridiculous, just absolutely blew up. And those were the Google hacking database. That was all that stuff. But I stopped visiting my forums. I just didn't show up anymore because I was busy writing books. And I wasn't writing the books that I just mentioned to you before. Those were the good books. I wrote some bad ones just because I wanted more books and I wanted my name on more stuff. Me. You see where this is going, right? Well, on the forums, there was a user by the name of Argod. Show of hands, how many people remember Argod? 1, 2, Do I hear 3? All right, well, our God was the single most active user. He was a PHP exploiter, for lack of a better term. He just tore through PHP applications, and he had like a record of something like 3 a day for a year straight. Something crazy like that. And he pre-released them all to our forums because he was one of the first guys that put Google Dorks on a web vulnerability release. He's like, here's the broken web thing, and oh, by the way, here's how you find them with Google. Okay, I didn't say it was ethical. But our God basically made my forum what it was. The thing that I noticed that wasn't quite right was that our God vanished. I didn't find out until 2 months later that our God had died. The guy that made my forum what it was, I mean, he's one of my top posters. Even my moderators were getting nervous because he was posting more than them. This guy vanished right out from under me. He died. Turns out he had an illness that had confined him to his room for months at the end of his life, and that's why he was churning out exploits so fast. The guy was dying. I didn't know. Now, normally I probably wouldn't have cared, but at this point in my life, this really bugged me, that somebody like this could pass away right under my nose and I wouldn't even know anything about them. I didn't know that he was confined to a wheelchair. He couldn't leave his room, but he was spending time boosting essentially my image because I got a crazy Google page rank out of this. Some other things happened. But let's just say that my focus was back onto me. Well, then something changed, and my wife went to Uganda. And some of you remember this because I talked a little bit about it in some of my talks. In fact, I think it was 2 years ago, 3 years ago, something like that. I said, I just got an SMS from my wife. She said she's got water now, and there's like chickens. And I thought it was funny because I was staying at Caesars and I had a jacuzzi. She had like no water, no electricity. I was like, we are worlds away. And I made a little joke out of it. Well, when my wife came back, I was glad to have her back, but she came back with pictures that sort of disturbed me. This is Colin. This kid has a perpetual smile. Every single picture, he's smiling. Every single video, he's dancing and running around with a big grin on his face. And this is where Colin lives. Colin lives there with his grandmother because both of his parents died of AIDS. And I thought to myself, how can a kid like this be so happy when he's got nothing? And I'm so miserable and I've got it all. And for whatever the reason was, I decided I was going to go to Uganda and figure out what the heck that was all about. And the way that you do these mission trips, I don't know if any of you have ever gone on them, is you raise support for the thing and you tell people that you're going to go and they send a little bit of money. Well, when I decided to do this, I really didn't have any friends that weren't online. So I sent out a few emails and a few people blogged on it. Bottom line is, hackers paid for our mission trip to Uganda, Africa. The hacking community sent us to Uganda to do mission work. And ironically enough, when they found out I was a computer guy, they gave me computer work. Go figure. So we repaired PCs. We went into their office and actually wired it. I took a handful of network cards, wireless network cards in there, and connected them together, and they could share a printer and all that. And I was like, woo, look at me. And I got Google on their wireless in their office. Thought that was clever. Well, the thing that caught me off guard was that this trip had immediate life-changing results. Immediately, I mean, when we were on the ground, kids started streaming into the office because now they could get processed faster. And I didn't really understand what that meant, but this office was for kids that had lost their parents and didn't have anywhere to go. And they would come in and they would sign up to try to get sponsors. And this little office, run by AOET, an empowerment organization, would throw it up online. And now kids were streaming into the office because they could do their work faster. I had cleared the bottleneck with technology and a handful of wireless cards. And that was a big deal. When I got back and I returned to my job, I was pretty let down. Remember, I had a dream job and all that stuff, but I didn't have immediate life-changing results in my job. It's just, in fact, I had worked for years having fun, doing all this stuff, and had never seen the result of my work. I had never seen a government installation or a company or even a shoe store secured because of my work, because another team did it. I never saw results. The only thing I did was break stuff. And so this was kind of a letdown for me because my job didn't have this stuff, and I started thinking, if I could do this with just myself and a handful of network cards, what if we scaled it up? And that's where Hackers for Charity came from. And the question that I was asking was, well, is the community going to be interested in this? Is the community going to be behind something that's designed to help others? You know, what if I give job references and stuff like that in exchange for the work? I had no clue, but I decided to give it a shot. Within weeks, one of our volunteers developed a child sponsorship system for the group that I worked with in AOET that gave them a website that looked like this, that helps them sponsor kids. You get a little picture, you get the story. You've probably seen sites like this before. The estimate for building it was $50,000, 6 months, 6 programmers. One HFC volunteer did it in a weekend with a case of Red Bull. For free. The result? 61 children sponsored. Now, 61 doesn't sound like a big number, but I have to explain sponsorship. Sponsorship is $30 a month, and it's a long-term commitment where somebody dedicates themselves to paying $30 a month for this kid's education, medical care, food, the whole 9 yards. It's a long-term commitment. This is basically 61 lives saved. Around this time, I started writing again. Some things were changing in my life, and I decided I didn't want to write crap anymore. If I was going to write something, it was going to be something that I believed in, something that I cared about, and it was going to be on my terms, and it was going to be my style. And the book didn't do bad. It actually outsold Google hacking in a shorter period of time. And I was so caught up in the work that I was doing in Uganda that I put that thing on the front cover that said Hackers for Charity, and proceeds, all the proceeds from the book are going into a fund to help feed children. And I meant that. I mean, I really believed so much in the stuff that we did in Uganda, and it was such a rush that we did that. So I want to show you this this video. Hopefully the audio is still working. I want to show you this video. This is Abel, and he is one of the children that we're taking care of. Take a look.
My name is Abel Lucho.
Abel.
Yeah.
Lucho.
Yes.
Ah, okay. And what grade are you in?
I'm in standard 7, SDK primary school.
Ah, okay. So you live here alone?
Yes.
By yourself? Mm.
I live here alone.
And your
Nobody.
parents? Your mom, your dad?
They all died.
Oh, I'm sorry. Your dad, he passed away recently.
Yes.
Mm. I'm sorry. So you've been here for a long time?
From 2006 up to now.
He has been around from 2006 to now.
Okay. And you built this home? You built this?
You are the one who built his house.
Yes, I built alone without anybody.
No one helped?
Yeah.
Oh, it's good. You did a good job on it. But it has some problems. Yeah?
The house is too small for the boy. He has a table that somebody donated to him, has no chair. This is his lighting system, the best he can have for his studies. And sometimes it goes dry without kerosene. So yesterday we donated some little money for him for kerosene. Whenever the rains rain, this house is actually flooded. You can see on the sides of this wall, it is damp right now, and it is a dry season.
When was the last time it rained?
3 weeks ago.
Yeah.
It rained 3 weeks ago, and
This
it
is
is
from
still
3 weeks.
It is still damp. So whenever it rains, this house is normally flooded.
So you're working Friday, Saturday, Sunday, sometimes?
Yes, need to
Sunday.
get food.
Oops, sorry.
He works
Food
to
and
get food.
tuition money in the school. So,
Tuition money.
yes,
And then back to school.
yes.
Then Monday he goes back to school.
So if you had food, if you had someone providing food,
If somebody gives you food,
you could work less,
Yes, I can work well.
work less. Mm,
Yeah.
yeah. And you told me you want to be a lawyer, a judge.
Yes,
Yeah, study law.
I prefer to study.
Mm. That's a lot of schooling. You'll be in school for a long time. That's okay?
Yeah.
You enjoy school?
Yes.
Yeah?
I
Good.
always enjoy it.
I enjoy school very well. You first there so that they take you.
It's
Say I
okay.
enjoy
It's okay. He's done
school
good.
well.
You did a good job. All right. Well, thank you. Thank you for showing us your home. Thank
We
you
are
very much.
grateful to see your home.
We invited Abel to the Hackers for Charity food drive, and the next day he showed up. We provided him with 16 kilograms of maize and a pound of cooking fat. We also provided him with seeds and garden space so that he can grow his own vegetables. The maize and cooking fat will last a month, but the garden will most likely last for years. The culture is extremely reserved, but when we presented him with a t-shirt from Kingpin Enterprises, he was all smiles. Abel will be entered into the online AOET sponsorship system, which was designed by Hackers for Charity volunteer Paul Madoff. He'll eventually find a sponsor to assist him with his food, health care, and school fees. But until that time comes, Hackers for Charity will continue to stand in the gap for Abel and the other thousands of children we currently support through our food program. All right, so this was all good, but still being a computer geek at heart, this just didn't have that like hardware techno lust thing, and I realized that my passion was about technology. So when I talked to AOET and I was like, what else can I do? I mean, computers are my thing. They said, what we need is computer training labs. What we do is empowerment. We don't do charity. We want to train people to get out of poverty. We don't want to keep giving them handouts. So we built a computer lab. This was the first computer lab that we built. And the thing that was interesting about this is we saw their first computer class, and that basically consisted of the teacher standing up, holding up a keyboard and saying, "This is the keyboard. You do not sit on it." Right? I mean, it was pretty bad. I mean, these guys, these kids had never touched a computer, and now they were taking computer classes. And this was the kind of thing that, I mean, remember the first time you sat at a computer, right? That feeling that you got, you're like, this is something like different. This is kind of cool. And then it like stuck with you your entire life. And now here you are sitting at Black Hat. Well, it was that moment times 100. Because imagine none of the kids around you having ever seen a computer before. And you come back and you're like, guess what I did today? Like, they can't even conceptualize what that means. That's how blown away these kids were. So we built some computer classrooms. Let me see if the audio is working on this one.
This is part of the computer class. From the funding that we got from Hackers for Charity, we were able to buy 10 computers. We divided the class into two. So we left 5 computers here. We have moved the 5 computers to another place about 5 kilometers away. These 5 computers here accommodate 20 older students and about 20 children. And then in the other place, we have 26 older children and over 30 children that turn up in the afternoon for lessons. This December program is really a program to excite young people about computer training and so on. Many of them have left school, they don't have the skill. So we hope that when they get interested in computer training, we'll be able to equip them better.
So as you can see, this thing really started to take off. And this was, remember, when I first started this, I thought to myself, is anybody really going to get behind this? And the answer to that question stunned me. The simple fact was, lots of people were interested in this work. And it struck somewhat of a chord in the community, which at the time I didn't really understand. When we built this computer classroom, I got a call from Sam Touchabes, the founder of AOET, and he says, the Honorable Dowdy McGarrico wants to meet with you. And I did a quick Google search, and it turned out he was none other than the Minister of Energy for Uganda, he's basically the president's right-hand man. Now, I had done a lot of government work, and I had never gotten a call from anybody that said the US vice president wanted to like hang out with me and chat. So despite the fact that I had a clearance at the time, and it I think is pretty much what got my clearances taken away, I went and met with him. Foreign national. all that. And he said, we see the work that you're doing, and I want to ask you a favor. He says, there are 5 schools in my country that I've promised computer labs to, and I've given money to people, and they've run away with it. And I always keep my word. Would you be able to build computer classes for me? Now, keep in mind, this is the second most powerful man in the country. And the way it works in Africa is like you do the government a favor first before they get into business with you. It's all based on relationships. This was him saying, I'd like to have a relationship, which leads to government assistance. Really interesting thing. But I knew that this was going to take a lot of time, it was going to take a lot of money, and it was going to take a lot of manpower to scale something up this big, to engage the government into a program that's so much bigger than me. It was going to take all of this time. Okay, so time, money, and manpower. I got the time thing worked out. I got that worked out by quitting my job so I could focus on it. And that's where the donation thing comes from. I do speaking gigs now for money, and I'm also supported by lots of people. Most of them are hackers. Most of them are in this community. Some of them are in this room. Actually fund my family's existence so we can do this work. So that was the time. The money came in a couple different ways. We sold t-shirts. We have some for sale, plug. The t-shirt thing really took off, and that funded one classroom that we're going to be installing when I get back to Uganda starting in August 5th from t-shirt sales. This is going to be one of the minister's classrooms, his first. We raised enough money to put in 30 machines into his classroom. And this is a huge deal. 2 guys from a White Wolf security, you guys are probably familiar with White Wolf, Tim and Dwight, they're coming out to help us out. This is our first remote team. It's kind of exciting coming out to do this stuff. So that was t-shirt sales. The Informer. Some of you know about The Informer. The Informer was an interesting idea. It's a subscription service. People sign up, $54 a year. It's $54 because that feeds 6 kids for 6 months. It works out. The math works out that way. And what you do is you get access to pre-release stuff. I'll talk more about that in a second. And a donor cloud, which is basically you buy space on my website, you get a link, and I have a decent page rank and all that stuff. So the money started coming in. Now then there was this thing about the manpower. And the manpower is us. I've seen the power of this community. In fact, I'm a product of this community. The knowledge that I gained from this community, the resources that I gained from this community made me who I am. The books and stuff, I sat down and, actually typed a bit, and that took some time. That took quite a bit of energy. But I wouldn't have been able to write any of the books if it wasn't from the knowledge that came from this community. So I feel pretty confident that the manpower is there. In fact, I'm not only a product of the hacking community, I'm now a very big advocate of this community. And I try to explain that to people. I said I was a cheerleader. My wife didn't like that very much. It brought up bad mental images of miniskirts in my legs, and so I had to get rid of that. But that's how I feel. When I talk to people about the work that we're doing, and I say, these are hackers that are doing this, and I love looking at, checking out the look on their face. It's the same look they get when they see this shirt, and they see hack and charity together, and they're like, dude, that's just messed up. Right? Well, it is. And to people that don't think this community is cool, I have charts to prove it. Here's a chart. Okay, so this chart's pretty interesting. This is the number of children that our Informer subscription service fed over time. And you'll see it's really low all the way up to March, because up to March it was me talking to people and saying, dude, you got to do this. It's a great idea. It feeds kids. And so those people were like people that were my friends and like my mom up to March. Well, then the community, the horsepower kicked in. Starting on April 22nd, Simple Nomad started releasing content. How many of you guys know Simple Nomad? Show of hands. All right, I'm not going to put a picture of the guy on the screen. Most of you know what he looks like. I had somebody tell me that he looks like Satan. He thought that was pretty funny. His dark hair and his dark outfits and, the chains and, like all that stuff. He is the last guy you would think would cross the line and start giving so that kids would eat. He was one of the first. April 22nd. April 30th, Roloff releases a Maltego super license. It extends the license on Maltego, 150 days. We've got an O-Day release, May 9th. May 30th, we've got a backtrack release, and you can see what happens to the numbers. Once the community is applied to this problem, things start happening. And I don't know about you, but I don't think I ever in my wildest dreams ever imagined I'd see a video clip like this. You're welcome. Thank you. It's not just that it's like, some poor village in East Africa that's saying it's just the fact that somebody's thanking hackers. I happen to think that's pretty cool. I've had some people tell me that this HFC thing has sort of shined a light in the darkness that was the hacking community. And there is darkness in our community. I'm not so pie in the sky to think that all of us get the warm and fuzzies about this kind of talk. There is evil here. Maybe not in this room, but you know what I mean. But the simple fact is that's the minority. The majority of us are curious. The majority of us have a passion for technology, figuring out problems, applying elegant solutions to very difficult problems. And when you lay all that stuff out, seems to me that's what an inventor is. But the word hacker gets applied to it, and that's a word for criminal. So I'm all about changing that. So I saw some interesting things happen in my life. I started with a passion. I was very passionate about technology. That got me so far. That got me to DEF CON. Second P is higher purpose. I found a higher purpose. There's a couple of them here, right? There's one that's starkly spiritual. There's one that's as simple as feeding kids that can't get help any other way. No matter how you look at it, there's a higher purpose in the mix that's critical to making stuff like this happen. And the third P is the power of we, which is community, which is us. When these three things come together, absolutely amazing things happen. And that's what I like to think is Hackers for Charity. That's what I think HFC is. It's the combination of those three things. And we're just at the beginning of this thing. And I'm excited about what's going to happen next. So that's the talk, but I have to answer a question because people are still asking this. So is this the end of Johnny Long the hacker now that you live in Uganda and you're going to be there till what, June, July, August of next year, and you're going to be so out of touch with modern technology that you will be no more good? And you'll be a dead body that singers will scrape up and make 2 chapters. I'm just kidding. I'm sure they will. All right, so to answer that question, I have to say, well, I guess I must be, because there are certain things that still make me laugh. Let me show you some photos from Africa. Here's the first. Not only did I laugh, but I had to turn the car around, back up, avoid a goat, get out, take the picture. I don't know what this is. Network for house power is like power over Ethernet. I sort of get that, or maybe. Meets Viagra, something crazy. Then there's, what was that? Nice. Give it a ring. Talk to me in a week. All right, then there's this one. These are all over Uganda. Check this out. Somebody got it. Yes, that does say front page, no security required. Yeah. The hardware geeks will love this. I found this for sale in a market. Does anybody know what the word was supposed to be? Anyone? I'm just drawing a blank. Universal. Ah, thank you. Whew. It's terrible. Omnipotence better. Then there's this. I felt like such a geek, but I had to do it because I knew it might end up on the back cover of 2600. taking pictures of weird payphones in strange places. I must be a hacker because I'm still guilty of this one too. See, I can't just go into a bank. Not only is it a bank, but this is the CSO of the bank, and yes, I'm sitting at his computer, and yes, he's there too, and yes, I have a camera, and yes, the flash went off once. So while I was sitting there, I noticed there was another guy over there that had his badge out, so I got a picture of him. And then I see the sign on the desk that says, what's the simplest way to avoid someone doing this? When you leave your desk, press Control-Alt-Delete. This was on the CSO desk. Loved that. Turned around to see if the security guard was pissed off. He was fiddling with his cell phone. So I turned around and got another picture. Now, I really got to keep my skills up, though, right? I can't go rusty because bank security is a little bit different there than it is here. They don't have all the electronic gizmos. They make up for it with steel and armed guards. So there's 12 armed guards at this bank. So I'm guessing if you make a run for the lockbox, they'll just gun you down. But anything else is fair game. Shoulder surfing also took a nasty turn. I was really trying to get this internet thing figured out. And so I go to Uganda Telecom, UTL, and I buy one of their 3G modems. And I'm like, okay, give me the thing. And he's like, well, I can't give it to you until I show you how it works. I'm like, God. So he takes me behind the counter. And he's like, okay, what you do is you plug your modem in like this. It's a USB thing, right? Plug it in, the software comes up. I sit there through a software install wizard, watch him push next 18 times. I think he actually read the EULA too. I take a deep breath because I realize this is Africa time, right? They're not on the same clock. You have to chill. The saying is, we have all the watches, Africa has all the time. So I'm sitting there with all the time in the world. And he gets to the part where it's all finished, and I'm like, okay, thanks. He's like, no, I got to show you how to run it. So he clicks the thing, and he says, you got to go in here, and you got to put your username and your password. So he types his username. That's the screenshot of his username. And I said, whoa, hold on. Can I get a picture of this so that I remember? He's like, yep. So I take the picture of the username, and he starts typing the password. And I tilt the camera this way above the keyboard and hit the record button. And watch the 5 characters go in for his password. I realized at that moment that I didn't have to pay a nickel for internet access. That's where that Christian hacker thing comes in, and that's when it really sucks. Because I'm paying for it. And social engineering, too. I'm riding my bike in Jinja, and I see this, and this looks so much like home that I just have to go back. It's the guys working on the phone system. And I don't even remember what I said to them, but they asked me to take lots more pictures, but this is their phone setup. Oh, my goodness. It looks like Verizon. That's excellent. All right, and then my favorite. I showed you pictures of the market, right? The Safeway and the Walmart and the Target. Those were all pictures of the same area from different directions. This is all you got. So I'm walking down the market and I see these huge stacks of computer paper. And I thought to myself, I had my son hold the camera. I thought you'd get a kick out of this. This is really underground stuff. This is black market. You know, I could probably get arrested. Anyway, here you go. Do you have papers from a bank? Bank paper. On this. Yeah.
Where they are placed?
No, from a bank.
In the back.
Yeah. Do you have these? How much? Yeah. Yeah, these are okay. Yeah. These are good. How much is it a kilo? 1,000? Yeah. brought a stack. It's actually up in my room. I brought a stack with me. Those of you that see me at DEF CON, come to the booth. We'll have it out at the booth. These were pages and pages and pages. I mean, hundreds of kilos of bank stuff. It was ATM sheets that showed ATM activity. It showed the account number. It showed how much they withdrew, the date, their name, like just streaming. And they sell this for people to like write on and like line their goat cages. I mean, $1 a kilo is less than I pay here in gas to drive and, look for the stuff. Unbelievable. And last but not least, I have to show you my new iPhone. You guys know the new iPhone came out, right? The 3GS. I don't have one. This is my phone. This is the service plan. This is how it works. You buy a SIM card on the street, you get a scratch off, and it adds minutes. This is how a service plan works in Uganda, which actually is freaking brilliant because these things are real money, right? You pay the same rate for any carrier. And okay, if you buy 10,000 shillings of airtime and put it on your phone, it's 10,000 shillings of money. So you can send money to people with your cell phone. So I can go into that goat market to the paper lady, walk up to her and beam her 2,000 Ugandan shillings with my cell phone, and it goes boink right over to her cell phone. I would love to see that work here. There's just no way. Never happened. So I think this is better than an iPhone. Besides, I can Google from it. And there's this really addictive game on it too that I like. This is the MTN zone, and what it does is it reduces your rates when traffic levels go down. So when like the network's quiet, it'll shoot up to like MTN zone 90, and your call is like free, or MTN zone 95. Or 110, and then they pay you money, or I haven't gotten that far. But the funny thing is, and this is to answer that question, am I still a hacker? I screwed with this thing for hours, right, Africa time. And I found out that once the little thing hits, if you hit any button on the cell phone, it locks that rate. So I just like sit there and watch it, and then I like hit the menu key right when it goes to 95% and put it back in my pocket. And then when I make the call, it's at 95% when I want it to be, which is clever. It's insanely clever, if I do say so myself, except for the fact that I spent 2 hours sitting there waiting for it to go to 95, which screwed up. And then this is, I think, the last photo. This is just a gas station, and the Ugandans really must have a technical sense of humor. All right, so that's it. That's what I have for you. The message is get involved in something bigger than yourself. That was what I learned through my career. It was all about me. It didn't amount to much. Get involved in something bigger than you. Be a part of something. Make a difference. It doesn't have to be Hackers for Charity. It doesn't have to be Africa. It can be anywhere. Just do something. That's my advice. All right, thanks guys for coming out. We're gonna